Hey everybody, it's Rollie, and I'm just going to go live on the other pages because we're running a few minutes behind. I apologize. Oh, automatically deletes. Okay, so for those of you who are on YouTube, and for those of you who are catching the podcast later, you guys just have to wait for a few admin things because I'm going to remove that one because apparently it's not going to let me. And then save changes and then add them again. And then we'll be live on those pages too. Silly Facebook. So there you go. So now we are live on the Facebook pages as well. So thank you, YouTubers, for waiting it out. And for those of you who are catching the audio podcast, thanks for your patience as we try and figure this out. And so today is another Chatting with Wisdom. And so for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rollie Allaire. Gigido Migwin Kwe is my spirit name, and I'm your host of Chatting with Wisdom. And so Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series featuring amazing women. There are different ways that women are amazing, and we get to celebrate that. And so I invite you to join me in my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. And you can also find a similar group on Telegram that I have been using this year to share positivity. So today I would like to welcome Melissa, and I should have asked you how to pronounce your last name.
You're good. It's Rohlfs.
Rohlfs. Okay. So she is a certified holistic health and life coach, helping busy women break free from sugar without deprivation so that they can be happy, healthy, and love their life. She's committed to empowering women to break free from dieting, emotional eating, and self-image issues so that they can ditch the diet mentality and feel empowered in their own skin. Melissa loves to teach women how to have their best body, best moods, and best life, all by breaking free from sugar. After her own tumultuous, apparently I'm not really good at that word, history with food, withholding, and then later in life binging, she learned how to deal with the core issues around her broken relationship with food. As a result, she felt called to go to school and learn to teach other women on how to do the same. She graduated from the Health Coach Institute as a holistic health and life coach in 2018, and she is proud owner of Free to Be Coaching. She is proud. She's a proud Boilermaker.
That's my college.
Okay. Boilermaker alumni, living in Arizona with her husband, Chad, and her 2 kiddos. So welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you, Rollie.
So this is really exciting. And so for those of you who catch Chatting with Wisdom every week, you know that typically it is on Wednesday. But if you also follow this, then you also know that I broke my leg. So things had to be shifted and changed around. So Melissa was wonderful and gracious to switch things up to be here today so that I can see the surgeon on Wednesday. So thanks so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you. It worked out well. So we're good.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the relationship that you were talking about, like in terms of like the relationship with food that you were talking about, because I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with more than people like to admit.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's something that's really talked about in society. So that's why I like to talk about it, because I think we need to bring awareness to it. But for me, it started in childhood. I remember being a little girl and hiding sugar and candy and cookies and different sweets in my room, and my parents not really knowing until we had some little mice come in and poop on the bed and they told on me. So that really kind of is where it started for me in childhood, was using sugar to kind of soothe or to stuff or just push down feelings or things that were happening that I didn't know how to deal with. And so that pattern continued through college, through marriage, through having kids, and food was kind of my go-to. It was how I tried to cope to get through situations I didn't know how to navigate, which was everything. Just.
So, and that is something that is so true. And so like for me, I grew up with having an eating disorder. So I was both anorexic and bulimic. And so those were the ways that I used to cope. So, and then and through the bulimia, then there's like the binging and purging. So like you had both. And those are the things that like a lot of times we don't talk about, because, and when I start talking about it, when I start being open about eating disorders, then I hear a lot more of like, yeah, me too. Yeah, that happened. Like, that's how I deal with it, or things like that as well. So that makes things like even that much more challenging, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think we live in a society where we value the quick fix. We value the pill, the patch, the shake, the whatever to get us our results. And we really haven't addressed the root of the issue. And you've got to deal with that root cause to get that lasting transformation, because that's what worked for me. That's what worked for the women I work with. We've tried all the things. And otherwise, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs surgery, right? Like, it's totally missing the mark.
Yeah, and one of the things, and like these are like, and I know that a lot of people like don't look at it from that mental health perspective, but like these are part of our mental health issues, and like we're really good at stuffing. We're really good at like you said, putting that bandage on. And I saw a video the other day. It was an ad specifically on mental health, and so they were talking about the broken bone, and like there was this like bone that was like broken out of and the person can see that it was broken. It's like, no, I'm strong. No, I can handle it. Like, you need to go to the hospital. You've got a broken bone. I can see it protruding. And they're like, no. And they were doing that comparison in terms of our mental health and being able to learn how to cope. And it's not that we don't know how to cope, because we find different ways of coping, and it's just, but what is the healthiest way of doing that? What is it that we can do instead of stuffing our feelings, and literally like stuffing our feelings with food? And I know that I come from a French Canadian culture where food is a big thing. Like, you celebrate with food, and I still do that. And so and because those are still things that are important. So like for birthdays, we still go out and celebrate with going out for a meal. And so like there's all these things around food that create this huge stigma when we are not listening to what is it that we need to be doing so that we can be well and moving forward.
Absolutely. And that mental health piece is so huge. Part of my journey too is getting diagnosed with PTSD and realizing the impact that food has on mental health and emotional health, and how I had always viewed it as, either using it to make myself feel better or not eating it to lose weight. But when you look at it from a more holistic perspective and you realize the impact it has on your emotional health and your mental health, everything changes, because that's a huge, huge thing. And I think another thing in society, like, we are not maybe addressing the mental health from the holistic perspective, and we could be, and things could look so much different.
And you're so right. And that's one of the things that from working in mental health is that we don't see that same holistic approach. It's like everything's in silos. So like you're dealing with this in mental health, and you're dealing with this in mental health. Relationships, you have to deal with somebody else for relationships. You have to deal with somebody for addiction. You have to deal with like so many different aspects, because different people get different fund in Canada anyway. We get different funding for different services. And so then everything's in silos. And I'm going to suspect that it's probably the same in the US and other parts of the country as well, because I do know I have some friends in Australia, and that's one of the things that they said is mental health is just one of those things that is a huge stigma of like being able to like not, we don't talk about it. It doesn't exist if we don't talk about it. And it's just so important. And like, even with the kids that I have in my, my stress and anxiety program, I've got kids from 4 to 14. And one of the things is that we talk about the mental health. We talk about like, how are they feeling? We talk about how, when something's not going well, that they need to have that outlet to be able to talk about things. But a lot of times, like I know for us growing up, it's like, stop crying. We're going to give you something to cry about. Right? Like those kinds of things. And Carol says, oh, me too, French Canadian. Right? So that, and French Canadians, definitely. I don't know, there's probably other cultures as well. But like definitely food is surrounds everything around anything that we do. So, but yeah, so like that's really important. And lots of sugary foods, lots of fatty foods, that kind of thing. So so culture, like how do you manage with some of the cultural things, right? So like when you're talking about some of those, being able to change some of those habits.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think too, with the sugar, we live in a society where, like if you think about parades or just going to events where food is given out, it's candy, right? Like we're throwing sugar at kids at parades and at Halloween and at these different events. And so how do we navigate those cultural and social settings. And I think part of it is to acknowledge, I think a really good first step, Rollie, is to acknowledge, like, how does this food make me feel? And do I want to feel that way? Because for me, when I eat sugar, I get crabby, I get tired, I get anxious, like I'm not pleasant to be around. And that's not how I want to show up in the world. And so I think if you can know that going in and ask that, kind of thinking beyond the here and now, I think is really important. So go into an event, a situation, a party, whatever, and just ask, how do I want to feel and how do I want to show up right now and going forward? And if you want to have cake, awesome, have the cake, but just be mindful of it.
Yep. And that's exactly it, right? So like, and that's that being mindful and having, and being able to choose that this is what I'm going to do. And I know that this is how I'm going to feel. Or, and I know that a friend of mine, one of the things that she said is that she's great at staying away from sugar. So if she can stay away from sugar, she's awesome. And there's no issues. And then as soon as she happens to tap into that sugar, she ends up with all that yucky feeling, but then she has all the cravings again. And then, so then she said, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's just this little piece of cake. So for her, she just chooses not to, for the most part, unless there's like something like major. But then she also knows that if I'm choosing to have this piece of cake, I'm also choosing that it's going to take me a little bit more time to be, like, it's going to take me a week to get back on track. Right. Yeah. So like that, she knows that she's going to have the cravings and she's going to have to deal with those and that kind of thing. Right. So
absolutely.
So it makes a huge difference that way. So
it does. And I think if you're a parent teaching your kids that, right, like I love to think of it and explain it to my kids, is it's like money. When you run out, you run out. And so I think you need to just plan ahead, like, no, this is what we have going. This is kind of where we're at. This is what we've had, and kind of monitor it from there. Like, it's not like a good or bad or yes or no. It's just a neutral thing. But how does it affect you, and how do you want to feel? How do you want to show up?
And it does really make it makes it harder for us when that's what everything is around us, right? So, and people are like, oh, well, just one piece won't hurt you, right? So like, I'm sure that we've all been to events that those are kind of the responses that happen, right?
Totally. And for me, I love lattes, like they're my jam, but I think the reason for that is because it's somebody doing something for me. I don't have to make the latte. So I know whenever I have a latte, I have to ask for like half the syrup, because if I have that, I'm going to crave sugar the rest of the day, the following day. And it just kind of sets me on this path that I don't really want to be on.
Yeah. And exactly. And that's one of the things that you can do is make those changes. Right. So, and I like that. I like that idea of like just half the syrup, right? So like I can still have it, but just with half of what it is that I was what I was going to have in the first place. And so like, I know that growing up, it was, like if you're having a cup of tea, it's with cream and sugar, and so getting out of that habit, because I'm a tea drinker with like, and especially when it's like brewed tea, and like because that's kind of growing up, and so when I started drinking less and less, and it was just funny because it was just habits and things that we go to, and I hadn't had sugar and cream in my tea for, I don't even know, I think it was like probably up to 2 years. Wow. And we went to a family members that we hadn't seen in a while, and they had offered me a cup of tea, and so then and they said, cream and sugar, and I'm like, yes, like just automatically, yes. I'm like, sure. And I put cream and sugar in it, and I'm drinking it. And my husband was looking at me because I hadn't drank it with cream and sugar in like years, and he looks at me and he's like, okay, well, I guess she wants cream and sugar. So then I'm drinking it, and then I'm tasting it and going like, oh my gosh, I used to drink this. Like, this is horrid. Like, this is horrid. And so like, I'm trying to get through the rest of the tea because I'm like trying to be polite. And it was like, and then like halfway through the cup, I'm like, here, I handed it over to my husband. I'm like, here, you can finish the rest of my tea, because like, I can't. I'm just done. There's just no way. But it's just habit, and it's just those and like you said, it's that cultural thing. And I like how you had pointed out like Easter. I mean, Easter too, Halloween and Easter, and like I'm guilty of that too. Like we did Easter egg hunts and stuff for the kids and things like that. But again, it's like how to be able to shift those and making those changes. I know that for me, it was nice with my kids with Halloween, because my kids didn't really care much for the trick-or-treating. We would we would literally do a block. And even when they became teenagers, and my youngest one, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go trick or treating with my buddies. And so like they're going on their bikes and they've got like their big pack sack of candy. Like he was still only a couple blocks and came back. And I said, oh, you guys are done already? He's like, no, they're still going, but I'm done. And he had like a small bag of candy and like that was it for him. And so I was fortunate that way that my kids weren't huge on that. So that was helpful.
That is helpful. And I think too, like to your point with the cream and sugar, sometimes there's a memory, like a positive, happy memory that we associate it with. And so we might be looking for that memory in that food. So kind of to the cream and sugar point, my grandparents had these coffee candies by Brock's. I don't know if you had them there, but they were like these brown balls and they tasted like coffee with cream and sugar. And they were like my favorite. I used to eat them at my grandparents' house. And I have so many great memories with my grandparents. And in the probably past, I don't know, I would say 5 or 6 years, I had found this recipe for this really good like cookie cake, and I made like a little mug cake, and I'd have some decaf coffee with cream and sugar. And I finally figured out after eating that, this tastes like that coffee candy. And so I wasn't hungry for the cookie cake and the coffee per se, but it was that memory and that association with my grandparents that I was longing for. And so I think it's interesting too, if we can kind of decipher like what is the emotion or what is the memory behind this food and why am I craving it, that can be really insightful.
Well, and I like that because I had gone on a trip with my mom, and so like the little pink mints was that's my mint, and my thing is that we would go to my grandparents, and that was the treat that my grandfather would give us all the time when we were younger. And so when they're there, and like so my mom came and she had like a baggie full of them, and so like it was just one after the other. I had to give them to her and say, can you please put them in your purse because I'm going to eat them all? And she said, well, that's okay. That's what I brought them for. And I'm like, no, please put them in your purse because I don't want any more. Like I've had more than my share, like having one or two, but like it's just something that it's like, and I can't just eat one. So I just don't have them. Right. So like I don't have them. And when I do buy them, then I consciously know that I'm going to have them gone by the end of the day or by the end of like the next day, but they're going to be gone. And I know that consciously. So when I do, it's a treat that I buy myself. But like I said, when I was traveling with my mom and she's got like this baggie full of these pink mints, I was like, man, get them out of here.
What are you doing?
So what are some of the things that, in terms of tips, so what are some of the tips that you give people when they're starting to, and they want to make some of these changes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple really simple free things that people can do right now, which I love. The first thing is to make sure that you're hydrated, because a lot of times a sugar craving can mimic dehydration. So make sure you're staying hydrated. Super basic, super simple. Just keep your water with you at all times. Like I'm a big proponent of, if it's in your eyesight, it's top of mind. So just keep water with you. Stay hydrated. That's a big thing. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. A lot of times that we reach for sugar is because we're actually tired or we're needing energy and we think it's going to give us that pick me up. And it will, like it'll give you that rush initially, but then your blood sugar is going to ride that roller coaster and come crashing down. So make sure you're getting enough sleep. That's another way to kind of ward off sugar cravings. The third thing is to make sure that you're nourishing your body. Like, are you getting enough of complex carbohydrates? Are you getting enough fruits, vegetables, proteins? Like, how is your whole entire nourishment? Like, what does that routine look like for you? So just make sure that you're getting nourished in other ways, because a lot of times a craving can be a sign of either like a deficiency nutritionally or something maybe within us that doesn't feel expressed. So a lot of times the women I work with are busy moms and they're doing all the things for all the people and they've kind of lost themselves in the process. So they're not really hungry for sugar. They're kind of craving either maybe more adult interaction, or they're craving more professionalism because they put their careers on hold to stay home with their kids, or there's something missing in their life that they're craving, and they know the craving and they identify it as maybe hunger. And so they replace that with sugar when that's not really the craving. So get curious and replace judgment with curiosity. Those are some things that people can do to kind of help with the sugar cravings.
Well, I love that, judgment with curiosity, because it's a learning to try and figure out where is it that's coming from, right? So like if I didn't correlate those little mints with my grandparents and my grandparents' home and that kind of thing, because it wasn't something that we ever had at our own house. Like that wasn't something my mom bought, but it was something that, and it was always my grandfather would take us, because their bedroom was out, like just from the living room, and it would be like, okay, come on over here, let's not tell your parents, right? So, and it was all of us, like it wasn't just one grandchild or whatever, like it was like we would all line up to be able to get our candy, and we weren't allowed to tell our parents that we were getting that candy. And so like my grandfather would line up, and like that was one of the things that we would do, and it was like that special thing. And so my I know that talking to my cousins like later on, because like my mom's the oldest of 13 grandchildren, so I'm the oldest of 13, like of all the children. And so I'd be talking with my other cousins when we got older, and they're like, yeah, Pepper must have really liked me, because like he always used to give me one of these candies. And I was like, no, he used to do that with all of us. They're like, really? I thought we were special. We were special in that moment, and we weren't supposed to tell our parents, right? So, but it was something like, it was like, those are the kinds of things. But like I said, and it wasn't like my grandparents, because they were French Canadian, and there was always food. My grandmother had pies that were always out. And so like if we were hungry, we can go and have like whatever it is that was going on that way. So like this was just that like special treat that it was just once in a while. It was just something that we got to have that was outside of all the rest of the normal stuff. Right. So
special.
It was awesome. Not so great anymore, because then I can't stop eating them. So I just avoid them. It's just easier. It's just easier if I don't have any. Some people can just take one and say, I'm going to commit to just one, but that's not something that I can just commit to just one. So,
and that's awesome that you know that about yourself and you're aware of that. I mean, I think that's a really big piece, right? Is knowing and being aware and implementing that.
And there's not all these different things, right? So like I can avoid having cake, and it's not a big deal to me that if there's cake around, like I'm not going to like indulge in the cake. I might have a piece of cake. And when I am having a piece of cake, I want the piece that has lots of icing. But I have a small piece, and then I'm okay. And I don't have cravings and stuff afterwards or anything like that. But again, like you said, it's about being able to create that awareness of like, what does that look like? Where is it that happens for us? Right. So.
And I think too, like deprivation, I loved your point about how you have the cake and then you don't have cravings afterwards. Because I think deprivation sets us up. I think it's a really big trap, because where the mind goes, the man follows. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't have that cake, all you're doing is you're making yourself want it even more. So if you have some cake, have the cake, enjoy it. Don't like do this shame spiral of, oh, I shouldn't have. No, it's not. Food has no moral value. It doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's food. Figure out why you wanted it and what you were looking for, and move on. That sounds harsh, but I think we spend so much time obsessing, and it's really not worth the brain space.
No, and it isn't. And those are some of the things. But again, it's trying to figure out like what's going on a little deeper, right? So why are we having that craving? Why? And like I like one of the things that you said is the moms who are completely deprived, that they're looking for more adult connections or professional connections. And so it makes a huge difference when we can actually take a look at like, why are we doing these things? What is it that's happening, and how can we make things easier for us?
Absolutely. Because it's usually not about the sugar or the food, Rollie. It's usually something inside of our life that's happening that's causing us to reach for it. So we need to figure out what that is. What's going on? What's the why behind the why?
Yeah. And it makes a huge difference, right? So, so one of the things that before we were coming on, we were talking about your program. So, what is it that you do? You want to tell me a little bit about what it is that you're offering your clients and how you make that happen for them?
Yeah, I have a program called Breaking Free from Sugar that relates to this topic. It's 3 weeks, and we figure out kind of that why behind the why. Why are you reaching for sugar? Why are you going towards sugar? What's really kind of going on? And so it's 3 weeks of kind of deep diving, giving some education, some information, some coaching around that. Also providing people with simple swaps and things they can do. Because again, I don't believe in deprivation. I think it just sets us up as a trap. And so really kind of providing some simple swaps and things that people can do right now to find that freedom from sugar. So that's my 3-week program, Breaking Free from Sugar.
Nice. And it's just 3 weeks.
Yeah. And then I have a longer program after that, but I like 3 weeks because it's a good starting point. Like a longer program can kind of feel overwhelming, especially if you're a mom or a busy professional with lots of things going on.
So in that 3 weeks, so how often are they connecting with you?
3 times.
3 times. Okay. So like it's once a week.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. So that's, and I like that because like you said, it's like not overwhelming, because that's one of the other things that sometimes becomes very cumbersome, is like, okay, well, I have to do this program, and oh, I'm not going to have enough time, and I'm going to have to do this. Like I have to listen to this video 5 times and like that kind of thing. So like, this is beautiful. I like how you're sticking your tongue out on that one. Because it's already stressful enough for us, right? So
totally. If I can like help with an easy button, I'm all about it.
So, so how else so in the description of wherever it is that you're catching this, it has like all of your links, but how can they get in touch with you? Like, what is the best and easiest way for them to reach out?
That's a good question. Gosh, I'm on all the platforms, so those would work. Email is great. Whatever works for people. I want to meet them where they're at. I don't want to be like, if you're not on Facebook, comes to Instagram. So whatever platform you're on, my link is below. Go there.
Perfect. So that's really helpful. And like I said, that's extremely helpful for us to be able to have that, and making things as easy as possible. And how else can we? So is there anything before we head out that we didn't touch on that you really think that is important for us to touch on?
Yeah, I just want people to know that it's possible. Like, I remember being an overwhelmed mom, living off of sugar and diet soda, and thinking that this was my life, that this was it. Like, and it was like I was baselining, I wasn't thriving. And I want people to know that there is hope, and there is the ability to thrive in your life. Even if you're overwhelmed and you're busy and you have a lot of responsibilities, like, you can have an amazing, happy, healthy life, and I can help you with that. So just know that I want people to know that there's hope. That's my main message, is there is hope.
Nice. And we feel hopeless. And especially when it comes to that part of it, of being able to eat healthy, and for whatever that reason is, whether it's because we are diabetic, or because we are wanting to lose weight, or because we're just feeling like that whole that malaise, right? Like that whole, like, not feeling good about whatever, and we're trying to make some changes and having that happen. So I think that that's really important as well.
Well, thank you. It's been awesome to connect with you. I'm glad your leg is doing well.
No surgery. Cross my fingers. No surgery. So we find out next week, but I'm casted for 6 weeks. So, so I feel like I'm on an island all by myself. I'm not by myself. However, I've got lots. I was saying beforehand, it's like I've got great support, so which is amazing. But for somebody who likes to do a lot of things and get it done when I want to get it done, that's a little bit more challenging. So even just trying to cook is like a little bit more challenging. I have to try and figure out how to get stuff from the kitchen counter to the table I was like, okay, my husband's been great at helping me cook. So, but it's, so it's been a little bit frustrating, but it's good. I've learned lots of things about asking for help and doing all the things. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for accommodating, and really looking forward to connecting further, because I think that this is something that is so important. And so maybe at another time we can actually talk about that mindset around the eating and things like that. So that would be great. So thanks everybody. And I should see you guys on Wednesday next week, so long as nothing changes. I will chat with all of you guys later. Bye for now.